lights go out, the stories begin. Night stories. Your nightmares become real.
My first night shift at this rundown station on the edge of town, and already the air felt wrong, thick like it was pressing against my skin. The kind of quiet that makes your ears strain for something, anything, to break it. I'd taken the job because I needed the money, but the manager's warning during training kept circling in my head. Our customers aren't normal. Just serve them quick and don't ask questions. I'd laughed it off then, thinking he was just hazing the new guy. I wasn't laughing now. The bell above the door chimed, sharp and jarring, snapping me out of my thoughts. My head jerked up, and there he was, a man, or at least something shaped like one, standing just inside the entrance. He was tall, too tall, his head nearly brushing the top of the doorframe. His coat was old, tattered at the hems, and his face. I couldn't focus on it, not because it was dark or shadowed, but because it was wrong. Like my eyes refused to settle on his features, sliding off them like oil on water. He didn't move at first, just stood there, staring at the counter. At me. I swallowed, my throat dry, and forced my voice to stay steady. "Welcome, can I help you?" The words felt hollow, like they didn't belong in the room. He didn't answer, just shuffled forward, his boots dragging across the floor with a sound like sandpaper on bone. My stomach twisted as he approached, and I caught a whiff of something sour, like milk gone bad but sharper, metallic. He stopped at the counter, his hands pale, too long, fingers like knotted twigs resting on the edge. Up close, I still couldn't make out his face. It was like looking at a smudge in the air, a blur where a person should be. "Pack of Reds," he said, his voice low, wet, like he was speaking through a mouthful of gravel. I nodded, turning to grab the cigarettes from the rack behind me, my hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped the pack. When I turned back, he was closer, leaning over the counter, his head tilted at an angle that made my spine crawl. I slid the pack across to him, avoiding his hands. "That'll be $8. He didn't move to pay. Instead, he reached up, his fingers brushing the air near my face. I flinched, stepping back, my hips slamming into the register. "Hey man, just pay and go, all right?" My voice cracked, and I hated it. He didn't respond, just kept staring, or at least I think he was staring. His head tilted further, unnaturally far, like an owl's. And then he smiled. I know he smiled because I saw teeth. Too many. Jagged, stained yellow and red, packed into a mouth that stretched too wide. My heart slammed against my ribs, and I gripped the edge of the counter to keep from bolting. He dropped a crumpled bill on the counter, turned, and shuffled out, the bell chiming as the door swung shut behind him. I stood there, breathing hard, staring at the $10 bill. It was old, faded, and when I picked it up, it felt damp. Not wet, not exactly, but like it had been sitting in something alive and sweating. I shoved it in the register and slammed the drawer shut, trying to shake the image of that smile from my head. I told myself it was just a weird guy, maybe drunk, maybe high. But the manager's words kept echoing. Our customers aren't normal. The next hour passed in a blur of unease. I busied myself restocking the candy aisle, trying to ignore the way the shadows seemed to shift in the corners of the store, places the fluorescents didn't quite reach. Every creak of the building, every hum of the fridge units made me jump. I kept glancing at the door, expecting that guy to come back, or someone worse. When the bell chimed again, I nearly dropped the Snickers bars I was holding. This time it was a woman. She was small, hunched, wearing a threadbare shawl that looked like it had been dragged through mud. Her hair hung in greasy clumps over her face, and she moved in quick, jerky steps like a marionette with half its strings cut. She didn't look at me, just darted to the back of the store, toward the coolers. I watched her through the security mirror, my pulse still hammering from the last customer. She stood in front of the drink case, motionless, her head twitching slightly, like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. Minutes passed. She didn't move, just stood there, staring at the glass doors of the cooler, her reflection distorted in the curved mirror. I cleared my throat, loud enough to carry across the store. "Ma'am? You need help finding something?" My voice sounded too loud, too human in the stillness. She didn't answer, Instead, she reached out, her hand trembling, and opened the cooler door. The fluorescent light spilled over her, and I saw her face, or what was left of it. Her skin was gray, sagging, like it was too loose for her bones. Her eyes were sunken, milky, and her mouth, God, her mouth. It was stitched shut, crude black threads crisscrossing her lips, pulling the skin tight in places and tearing it in others. Tiny beads of dark blood oozed from the puncture wounds, dripping onto her chin. My stomach lurched, and I gripped the counter, my knees threatening to buckle. She turned her head toward me, slow, deliberate, and those cloudy eyes locked onto mine. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It was like she was looking through me into something I didn't want to know existed. She grabbed a bottle of water, her fingers leaving smears of something dark on the glass, and shuffled toward the counter. Every step she took felt like it was pulling the air out of the room. When she reached me, she set the bottle down with a soft clink, and I saw her hands up close. Nails split, skin peeling back like old wallpaper, exposing raw, glistening flesh underneath. I scanned the bottle, my hands moving on autopilot, and mumbled, "That's $2. She didn't speak, couldn't with her mouth like that. But she reached into her shawl and pulled out a small, folded piece of cloth. She unfolded it, and I gagged. Inside was a pile of teeth, human teeth, some still trailing bits of bloody gum. She pushed the cloth toward me like it was payment. I stumbled back, my voice shaking. No, I can't. Cash only, ma'am." Her head twitched again, and she leaned forward, the stitches in her lips straining as her mouth tried to move. A low, gurgling sound came from her throat, and I swear I heard words in it. Words that weren't English, weren't anything I'd ever heard before. I don't know how I got through ringing her up. I don't know how I handed her the bottle without screaming. She took it and left, the bell chiming behind her, and I sank to the floor behind the counter, my hands over my face, trying to block out the image of those teeth, that stitched mouth. The manager's warning wasn't a joke. These weren't people. They were something else, something that shouldn't be walking into a gas station at night, buying cigarettes and water like they belonged here. I stayed there, curled up, until the next customer came in. The bell rang again, and I forced myself to stand, my legs like jelly. This time, it was a kid, or at least, it looked like one at first. He couldn't have been more than 10, wearing a hoodie too big for him, the hood pulled up over his face. He didn't say anything, just wandered the aisles, picking up random items, a bag of chips, a candy bar, a lighter, and setting them down again. I watched him in the mirror, my heart still racing from the woman. Something about the way he moved was off, too fluid, like his joints didn't work the way they should. "Hey kid," I called, trying to sound normal. "You gonna buy something or what?" He stopped, his back to me, and then turned, slow, like he was on a swivel. The hood fell back, and I bit my tongue to keep from screaming. His face was empty. No eyes, no nose, just a smooth stretch of skin where features should have been, except for a mouth that was too wide, lips cracked and bleeding. He opened it and a sound came out, a high-pitched whine that made my ears ring and my vision blur. The lights flickered, the fluorescence buzzing louder, and I felt something warm trickle from my nose. Blood. He didn't move closer, just stood there, whining, his head tilting back and forth like he was studying me. I gripped the counter, my knuckles white, and forced myself to speak. "Get out! Now!" The words were barely a whisper, but he stopped, his mouth snapping shut. He turned and walked out, the bell chiming, leaving me alone again. I locked the door. I didn't care if it was against policy. I wasn't letting anything else in. The rest of the night stretched ahead, endless, and I knew I wasn't getting out of this shift unchanged. The manager's warning wasn't just about weird customers. It was about surviving them, and I wasn't sure I could. The lock on the door clicked into place, but it didn't make me feel safer. The air in the gas station was heavier now, like it was laced with something I couldn't name, something that clung to my skin and made my lungs ache. I backed away from the door, my eyes darting to the security mirrors, half expecting to see that faceless kid staring back at me from the aisles. The fluorescence buzzed louder, flickering in a way that made the shadows pulse like living things. I wiped the blood from my nose with the back of my hand, the coppery smell mixing with the sour, metallic tang still lingering from the first customer. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept hearing the manager's voice in my head. Our customers aren't normal. Serve them quick and don't ask questions. I should have quit right then, walked out and never looked back. But I needed this job, and something about the way the night was unfolding felt like a trap I was already caught in. I retreated behind the counter, my sneakers squeaking on the linoleum, and checked the clock. Only 2 hours into my shift, and it felt like I'd been here for days. The silence was worse than the customers, thick and oppressive, broken only by the hum of the coolers and the occasional creak of the building settling. I tried to focus on something normal, straightening the cigarette packs, wiping down the counter, but every movement felt watched. The mirrors didn't help. Every time I glanced up, I caught glimpses of the aisles, empty but not empty, like the shadows were waiting for me to look away. The bell didn't chime this time. Instead, there was a soft thump against the glass door, like something heavy had leaned into it. My heart lurched, and I froze, staring at the door. The lock held, but the glass rattled slightly, and I saw it. A shape pressed against the outside, too big to be human. It was hunched, its outline blurred through the smudged glass, but I could make out limbs. Too many limbs, long and thin, bending in ways they shouldn't. My breath caught in my throat, and I ducked behind the counter, my back pressed against the cold metal of the register. The thumping came again, slower, deliberate, like it was testing the door. I held my breath, praying it would leave, praying I hadn't been seen. The thumping stopped, and for a moment I thought it was gone. Then I heard it, a low, wet scraping like nails dragging across the glass, slow and purposeful. My stomach churned, and I risked a glance over the counter. The shape was still there, its head, or what passed for a head, pressed against the door, smearing something dark and viscous across the glass. It wasn't trying to get in anymore. It was marking the door, leaving streaks of whatever oozed from it. I gagged, the smell somehow seeping through the cracks like rotting meat left in the sun too long. I grabbed the phone from under the counter, my fingers fumbling over the buttons, but the line was dead. Not static, not disconnected, just nothing, like the world outside had stopped existing. The shape pulled away, its limbs folding back into itself, and it shambled off into the dark beyond the parking lot lights. I stayed crouched, my knees aching, until I was sure it was gone. When I stood, my legs were unsteady, and I had to grip the counter to keep from falling. The glass door was streaked with that dark, oily substance, glistening under the fluorescence. I didn't want to know what it was, didn't want to get close enough to find out, but I couldn't stop staring. The streaks weren't random, they formed shapes, loops, and angles that hurt my eyes to look at, like they were trying to pull my mind apart. I tore my gaze away and grabbed a rag, intending to clean the counter, anything to keep my hands busy. That's when I noticed the register. The drawer was open, just a crack, and the $10 bill from the first customer was gone. In its place was something else, a small folded piece of paper, yellowed and stained, like it had been buried for years. My fingers hesitated over it, my skin crawling at the thought of touching it, but I couldn't leave it there. I unfolded it and my breath caught. It was a drawing, crude but detailed, of a face. My face. The lines were jagged, drawn in something dark and flaky that smelled like blood. The eyes were too big, the mouth too small, and there was something wrong with the proportions, like whoever, or whatever, drew it didn't understand human anatomy but wanted to mimic it. I dropped the paper, letting it flutter to the floor, and backed away, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. The drawing wasn't just a picture, it was a warning, or maybe a claim. I didn't know which, but I knew I couldn't stay behind the counter anymore. I grabbed the keys from the hook and headed for the back room, hoping there was a place to hide, somewhere I could wait out the shift. The back room was small, cluttered with boxes of stock and a single flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. I locked the door behind me, the click of the bolt louder than it should have been, and sank into a corner, pulling my knees to my chest. The bulb flickered, casting jagged shadows across the boxes, and I heard it. A faint scratching like fingernails on wood, coming from the other side of the door. My blood ran cold. I hadn't heard the bell, hadn't heard footsteps, but something was out there in the store. The scratching grew louder, more insistent, and then stopped, replaced by a soft, rhythmic tapping, like someone, or something, knocking politely. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The tapping continued, slow and steady, and then a voice came through the door, soft and rasping, like dry leaves scraping together. "Open the door," it said. "I just need a few things." My mouth went dry and I pressed myself harder against the wall, the concrete cold against my back. The voice wasn't human. It was too hollow, too layered, like multiple voices speaking at once, overlapping in a way that made my head throb. The tapping stopped, and I heard a new sound, a wet, slithering noise like something dragging itself across the floor. I pictured the thing from the door, its too many limbs sliding over the linoleum, leaving trails of that dark ooze. My hands shook as I clutched the keys, the metal biting into my palm. The slithering stopped, and the silence was worse. I waited, counting my breaths, each one shallow and ragged. Then the bulb overhead flickered again, and something moved in the corner of the room. Not outside, inside. My head snapped toward the sound, and I saw it. A shadow, too tall, too thin, peeling itself away from the wall like it had been part of it. It didn't have a face, just a vague, shifting outline, but I felt its attention on me, heavy and suffocating. It didn't move toward me, not at first. It just stood there, swaying slightly like it was tasting the air. Scrambled to my feet, my back pressed against the door now, the keys slipping from my sweaty hands. The shadow took a step, its movements jerky like a film reel skipping frames. Its limbs stretched, impossibly long, brushing the ceiling, and I saw its hands, claws really, curved and glistening, dripping something that hissed when it hit the floor. The smell hit me next, sharp and chemical, like bleach mixed with decay. I gagged, my vision swimming, and fumbled for the door handle behind me. The thing spoke, its voice a low, guttural hum that vibrated in my chest. "You locked the door," it said, the words slurring together. "That's not polite." It took another step, and I saw its head tilt, the shadow of its face splitting into a grin wide and wet, with too many teeth glinting in the flickering light. I twisted the handle, my hands slipping, and threw the door open, stumbling back into the store. The lights were out, not flickering, gone. The store was pitch black except for the faint glow of the cooler doors at the back. I froze, my breath hitching, listening for the thing from the back room. Nothing. No slithering, no tapping, just silence so deep it felt like it was swallowing me. I took a step, my sneakers squeaking, and something cold brushed against my arm. I yelped, spinning around, but there was nothing there. Just the empty aisles, the shadows thicker than they should have been. Then I saw them, shapes moving in the dark just beyond the edge of the cooler's glow. Not one, not two, but dozens. Tall, short, hunched, crawling, all wrong, all not human. They didn't approach, just watched, their outlines shifting like smoke. I backed toward the counter, my hands fumbling for the phone, but it was still dead. The shapes moved closer, silent, their presence pressing against me like a physical weight. I didn't know what they wanted, I didn't want to know. But I knew one thing, the night wasn't over, and I wasn't alone. The darkness in the gas station was absolute, a living thing that pressed against my eyes and throat. The faint glow from the cooler doors at the back was my only anchor, but it felt like a trap, drawing me toward the shapes lurking just beyond its reach. They were everywhere now, silhouettes that didn't hold still, their edges blurring and twisting like smoke caught in a draft. Some were tall, their heads scraping the ceiling. Others crouched low, scuttling like insects across the floor. Couldn't see their faces, but I felt their attention, sharp and hungry, pinning me in place behind the counter. My hands gripped the edge, the wood splintering under my nails, and my breath came in shallow gasps, each one tasting of that sour, metallic air that had followed every customer tonight. The manager's warning, "Our customers aren't normal," wasn't just a warning, it was a promise, and I was living it now, surrounded by things that wore human shapes but weren't. The phone was still dead, the door still locked, and the keys I'd dropped in the back room were gone, swallowed by the dark or taken by the thing with the claws. I was trapped, and the shapes were closing in, their movements silent but deliberate, like predators circling a wounded animal. A low hum started, not from any one of them, but from all of them, a vibration that crawled under my skin and made my teeth ache. It wasn't a sound you hear with your ears, it was deeper, like it was coming from inside my skull. I pressed my hands to my head trying to block it out, but it only grew louder, sharper, until it felt like my brain was splitting apart. The shapes moved closer, their outlines sharpening for just a moment. Long limbs, too many joints, faces that weren't faces but holes, gaping and wet, filled with things that writhed. My stomach heaved and I gagged, bile burning the back of my throat. "Stop," I whispered, my voice barely audible, but the hum faltered just for a second. The shapes froze, their heads, or whatever passed for heads, tilting in unison like they were listening. I didn't know what made me speak, but the words slipped out again, louder this time. "Stop!" The hum cut off, and the silence that followed was worse, heavy and suffocating, like the air itself was holding its breath. The shapes didn't move, but I could feel them watching, waiting, their presence a weight that crushed the air from my lungs. I took a step back, my hip bumping the register, and something crunched under my foot. I looked down and saw the drawing from earlier, the one of my face, scrawled in that flaky, blood-like substance. It was crumpled now, but the eyes seemed bigger, darker, like they were staring back at me. I kicked it away, my heart hammering, and that's when the lights flickered back on. Not all at once, but in a stuttering pulse, the fluorescents buzzing and snapping like they were fighting to stay alive. The shapes were gone, the aisles were empty, the mirrors showing nothing but shelves and candy bars. But I wasn't fooled. They were still here, just out of sight, waiting for the dark to return. I didn't have time to think. I grabbed a pen from the counter, the only thing close to a weapon, and moved toward the door, my sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. The streaks on the glass were still there, glistening like fresh oil, and I could see now that they weren't just random marks. They were symbols, sharp and angular, carved into the glass itself, deep enough to catch the light. My hand hovered over the lock, but before I could touch it, something slammed against the door, hard enough to make the frame groan. I stumbled back, the pen slipping from my hand, and saw it, a hand, or what might have been a hand, pressed against the glass. It was gray, bloated, with fingers that split at the ends into thin, writhing tendrils, each one tipped with a tiny, glistening mouth. I screamed, the sound tearing out of me, and the hand pulled back, leaving a smear of something thick and yellow. The door rattled again, softer this time, and then stopped. I stood there shaking, my eyes locked on the glass, waiting for it to shatter. It didn't. Instead, a new sound started, a soft, rhythmic tapping coming from behind me. I turned, slow, my neck stiff with dread, and saw it. A figure standing at the far end of the store near the coolers. It was the woman from earlier, the one with the stitched mouth, her shawl dripping with something dark and sticky. She was holding the water bottle I'd sold her, but it wasn't water anymore. The liquid inside was thick, red, sloshing against the plastic like it was alive. She took a step toward me, her head twitching, the stitches in her lips pulling tight. The threads were fraying now, snapping one by one, and her mouth started to open, the skin tearing with a wet, ripping sound. Blood poured down her chin, pooling on the floor. And I saw something moving inside her mouth. Something long and segmented like a centipede, its legs clicking against her teeth as it crawled out. I backed away, my hands scrabbling for anything to hold on to, and knocked over a display of chips, the bags crunching under my feet. "Don't," I said, my voice breaking. But she kept coming, her milky eyes fixed on me. The centipede thing slid free, hitting the floor with a wet slap, and started crawling toward me, its legs leaving tiny smears of blood. I kicked at it, my foot connecting with its body, and it burst, spraying a foul, black liquid that burned where it hit my skin. I screamed again, stumbling toward the counter, and that's when the lights went out again. This time the darkness was complete. No cooler glow, no flicker of fluorescence, just a void that swallowed everything. I couldn't see the woman, couldn't see the shapes, but I heard them, shuffling, slithering, tapping, all around me. The hum started again, louder now, and I felt it in my bones like my body was unraveling from the inside. I dropped to my knees, my hands over my ears, and something touched me. Cold, wet, sliding across my arm like a tongue. I jerked away, crawling blindly, my hand slipping in something warm and sticky on the floor. I don't know how I found the back room again. The door was open, the lock broken, and I threw myself inside, slamming it shut behind me. The bulb was still flickering, weaker now, and the shadows were thicker, moving like liquid across the walls. I pressed my back against the door, my chest heaving, and realized I wasn't alone. The thing from before, the one with the claws, was here, crouched in the corner, its head tilted at an impossible angle. Its grin was wider now, its teeth dripping with something dark and viscous, and its eyes, God, its eyes were holes, endless and black, pulling me in. "You didn't serve me," it said, its voice a chorus of whispers, each one slicing into my mind. I just wanted a few things. It stood, its limbs unfolding, stretching until they brushed the ceiling, and I saw its body wasn't solid. It was made of shadows, shifting and coiling, with things moving inside it, like worms in rotting fruit. I pressed harder against the door, my hands fumbling for the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The thing stepped closer, its claws dragging across the floor, leaving gouges that smoked and hissed. I don't remember what happened next. Not clearly. There was a sound, a scream that wasn't mine, and the bulb exploded, showering me with glass. The darkness swallowed everything, and I felt hands, not one pair but dozens, grabbing me, pulling at my clothes, my skin, my hair. They weren't trying to hurt me. Not yet. They were holding me, keeping me there like they wanted me to stay. To become one of them. When I came to, I was back behind the counter. The lights were on, the store was quiet, and the clock said my shift was over. The door was unlocked, the streaks on the glass gone, the drawing nowhere to be found. My hands were clean, but my skin burned where the black liquid had touched me, and my reflection in the security mirror looked wrong. My eyes were too big, my mouth too small. Like the drawing, I grabbed my jacket and ran, not stopping until I was home, the dawn light cold and gray behind me. I never went back. I didn't quit, didn't call the manager, just left everything behind. But I still see them, in the corners of my vision, in the shadows at night. The customers, they're still out there, waiting for me to serve them.
If you like my stories, please like and subscribe. On to the next story.
I've always been a night owl, so when I saw the job listing for a night shift security guard at the old textile factory on the edge of town, I figured it was perfect. The pay was decent, the hours matched my rhythm, and it was just watching monitors and walking rounds in an empty building. Easy, right? I didn't ask too many questions during the interview, which was more of a formality than anything else. The hiring manager, a gaunt man with eyes that seemed to dart everywhere but at me, handed me a contract and a folded piece of paper with night shift rules, written in shaky handwriting. He told me to memorize them and never deviate. I laughed it off at first. Rules for sitting in a security booth all night seemed like overkill. But when I unfolded the paper and read the list, something about the specificity, the urgency, and the phrasing made my stomach twist. I should have walked away then, I didn't. The factory is a sprawling relic from the industrial boom. All rusted beams and cracked concrete, with rows of broken windows that let in drafts of cold air. It's been abandoned for decades, save for the occasional security detail to keep vandals and squatters out. My first night, I arrived at the gate, a heavy chain-link monstrosity that groaned when I pushed it open. The security booth was a small glass-walled box near the main entrance, equipped with a bank of grainy monitors, a creaky chair, and a desk that smelled faintly of mildew. The air inside was stale, heavy with the scent of old metal and something sour I couldn't place. I settled in, flipped on the monitors, and pulled out the rules to review them again. There were 10, each one stranger than the last. Rule 1. Never leave the booth between 2 and 3 a.m. No exceptions. If you hear knocking, ignore it. I glanced at the clock on the wall, a cheap plastic thing that ticked too loudly. It was just past midnight, plenty of time to get comfortable. The monitors flickered, showing empty hallways, a cavernous warehouse floor, and the exterior lot where shadows danced under flickering streetlights. Rule 2. If a monitor shows a figure standing still, do not acknowledge it. Turn off the monitor and wait 5 minutes before turning it back on. My eyes lingered on the screens, half expecting to see something already. Nothing but static and empty spaces. I kept reading. Rule 3. If you hear humming, cover your ears and hum a different tune until it stops. I snorted at that one. What kind of workplace had rules about humming? But the further I read, the less funny it seemed. Rule 4. If you see blood on the floor during your rounds, walk backward to the booth and lock the door until sunrise. My pulse quickened. Blood? I told myself it was probably a prank, something to scare the new guy. But the paper was worn, the ink faded, like it had been handled by too many hands over too many years. I tucked the rules into my pocket and tried to focus on the job. The first hour was uneventful. Just the hum of the monitors and the occasional creak of the building settling. I sipped lukewarm coffee from a thermos and checked my phone, but the signal was spotty, and the Wi-Fi didn't work. Around 1 a.m., I decided to do my first round. The rules said to walk the perimeter every 2 hours, sticking to the main hallways and avoiding the basement unless absolutely necessary. I grabbed my flashlight, a heavy thing that doubled as a club, and stepped out into the factory. The air outside the booth was colder than I expected, sharp enough to sting my lungs. The main hallway stretched out before me, a tunnel of chipped paint and exposed pipes, lit only by the occasional emergency light that cast a sickly yellow glow. My boots echoed on the concrete, too loud in the silence. I moved quickly, sweeping my flashlight over the walls, half expecting to see graffiti or signs of squatters. Nothing, just dust and cobwebs. The warehouse floor was next, a massive open space filled with rows of rusted machinery, looms and spindles frozen in time. The shadows here were deeper, pooling in corners where the light didn't reach. I kept my pace steady, telling myself it was just an old building, nothing more. Back in the booth, I checked the monitors again, still empty. The clock ticked closer to 2 a.m., and I remembered the first rule. I wasn't sure what to expect. Maybe nothing, maybe just my imagination running wild. But I stayed put, eyes glued to the screens. At exactly 2Q, a faint knock echoed from the booth's door. My heart lurched. The sound was deliberate, 3 slow taps like someone was standing just outside. I froze, my hand hovering over the door handle before I remembered the rule. Ignore it. The knocking came again, louder this time, followed by a low, guttural sound that wasn't quite a voice. It was like someone was trying to speak through a throat full of gravel. I backed away from the door, my breath shallow, and forced myself to focus on the monitors. The knocking stopped after a few minutes, but the silence that followed felt worse, like the air itself was holding its breath. At 3 a.m., the booth felt suffocating. I checked the monitors again, and that's when I saw it. On the screen showing the warehouse floor, a figure stood in the center, perfectly still. It was humanoid but wrong, too tall, its limbs too long, its head tilted at an angle that made my skin crawl. The image was grainy, but I could make out a face or what passed for one. No eyes, just dark hollows where they should have been, and a mouth stretched too wide, like it had been carved open. My stomach churned, but I remembered Rule 2. Don't acknowledge it. My hands shook as I reached for the monitor's power button, fumbling in the dark. The screen went black and I sat there, counting seconds in my head, praying 5 minutes would pass quickly. When I turned the monitor back on, the figure was gone. I let out a shaky breath, but my relief was short-lived. A faint humming started, low and uneven, like someone was singing through a broken radio. It was coming from outside the booth, somewhere in the hallway. Rule 3 flashed in my mind. I clapped my hands over my ears and started humming the first tune that came to me, an old nursery rhyme my mom used to sing. The humming outside grew louder, more insistent, like it was trying to drown me out. It wasn't just sound. It felt like it was crawling into my skull, pressing against my thoughts. I hummed louder, my voice cracking, until the noise finally faded. When I uncovered my ears, the silence was deafening. I didn't sleep, didn't move, just sat there staring at the monitors until my next round at 4 a.m. The rules said to walk the same route, so I forced myself out of the booth, flashlight gripped so tight my knuckles ached. The hallway felt different now, the air thicker, like I was wading through something invisible. I moved faster than before, my beam cutting through the dark, catching glints of metal and dust. That's when I saw it. On the floor, just past the warehouse entrance, a smear of dark red glistening under the light. Blood. My stomach dropped. Rule 4. Walk backward to the booth and lock the door until sunrise. I froze, my legs refusing to move. The blood wasn't just a smear. It was a trail leading into the warehouse where the shadows seemed to pulse. I took a step back, then another, keeping my eyes on the trail. My flashlight shook, the beam jittering across the floor. Something moved in the corner of my vision, a flicker, like a shadow stretching too far. I didn't look. I couldn't. I kept walking backward, my boots scuffing against the concrete, my breath loud in my ears. The trail seemed to follow me, the blood spreading, pooling in places it hadn't been a second ago. By the time I reached the booth, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely turn the lock. I slammed the door shut and sank to the floor, my back against it, listening for any sound. There was nothing, just the tick of the clock and my own ragged breathing. Sunrise was hours away, and the rules didn't say what to do next. I checked the monitors, half expecting to see the figure again, but they were clear. Too clear, like the factory was holding its breath, waiting for me to make a mistake. I pulled out the rules again, rereading them, looking for something I'd missed. The last rule caught my eye. If you see your own face on a monitor, leave immediately. Do not look back. My heart pounded as I glanced at the screens. They were still empty, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching, waiting for me to slip up. The night wasn't over, and I had a sinking feeling it was only going to get worse. The booth felt like a cage as I sat there, back pressed against the locked door, the rules crumpled in my sweaty fist. The clock ticked toward 5 a.m., each second dragging like a blade across my nerves. The monitors flickered, their grainy images taunting me with empty hallways and the warehouse's gaping darkness. The blood I'd seen on the floor haunted me, its wet glint burned into my mind. I kept replaying Rule 4. Walk backward, lock the door, stay until sunrise. I'd done that, hadn't I? So why did I feel like I'd missed something? Like the factory was waiting for me to screw up? I forced myself to stand, my legs shaky, and checked the monitors again. The warehouse feed was clear, no blood, no figure, just the same rusted looms and shadows. But the silence was wrong, too heavy, like the air was thick with something I couldn't see. I glanced at the rules again, my eyes snagging on Rule 5. If you hear footsteps behind you during rounds, do not turn around. Keep walking until you reach the booth. My next round was due soon, and the thought of stepping back into those hallways made my skin crawl. But sitting here, trapped in this glass box, wasn't any better. I felt exposed, like something was watching me through the monitors, through the walls, through the air itself. At 5:30 a.m., I couldn't put it off any longer. The rules demanded another round, and I wasn't about to test what happened if I skipped it. I grabbed my flashlight, its weight a small comfort, and unlocked the door. The click of the lock echoed too loudly, and I flinched, half expecting something to lunge from the shadows. The hallway stretched out before me, the same chipped paint and flickering lights, but now, every shadow seemed to writhe. Every creak of the building felt like a whisper. I moved quickly, keeping my flashlight trained on the floor, avoiding the walls where the darkness clung too thickly. The warehouse was worse. The vast space swallowed my light, the beam barely reaching the far walls. The air was colder here, sharp with the metallic tang of rust and something else, something raw, like meat left out too long. I stuck to the main path, my boots echoing in the emptiness, and tried to focus on the rules. Don't look at the walls. Don't stop moving. Don't turn around. I was halfway through when I heard it. A soft, deliberate step behind me. My breath caught and every muscle in my body screamed to look back. Rule 5. I clenched my jaw and kept walking, my flashlight shaking in my grip. Another step, closer this time, heavy and wet, like bare feet slapping against the concrete. I quickened my pace, my heart hammering so loud I thought it would drown out the sound. But it didn't. The footsteps matched my rhythm, always just a few feet behind, never speeding up, never slowing down. I reached the hallway, my chest tight, and kept moving, eyes fixed on the booth's faint glow in the distance. The footsteps followed, steady, relentless. I wanted to run, to sprint back and slam the door, but the rules were clear. Keep walking. My flashlight caught something on the floor, a fresh smear of blood glistening like it had just been spilled. My stomach lurched, but I didn't stop. I stepped over it, careful not to let my boots touch the red, and kept going, backward now, remembering Rule 4. The footsteps didn't falter, even as I moved awkwardly, my beam jittering across the walls. I didn't dare look behind me, but I could feel it. Something close, something wrong. Its presence pressing against my back like a cold hand. When I reached the booth, I fumbled with the lock, my hands slick with sweat. The footsteps stopped just outside the door, and for a moment I thought I heard breathing, low, ragged, like air being dragged through a torn throat. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my chest heaving. The silence returned, but it wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence that hides something, like a predator holding its breath. I sank into the chair, my eyes darting to the monitors. The hallway feed was clear, but the warehouse screen showed something new. A shadow, stretched and distorted, standing just out of frame. I remembered Rule 2 and shut the monitor off, counting to 5 minutes in my head. When I turned it back on, the shadow was gone, but the blood was back, pooling in the center of the warehouse floor, spreading like it was alive. I checked the clock. 6 a.m. Sunrise was close, maybe an hour away, but it felt like an eternity. I pulled out the rules again, desperate for something to anchor me. Rule 6. If the lights in the booth flicker, close your eyes and count to 10. Do not open them until you're sure the flickering has stopped. I glanced at the overhead bulb, steady for now, but the thought of sitting in the dark, eyes closed, while something prowled outside made my blood run cold. I kept reading. Rule 7. If you smell burning, leave the booth immediately and hide in the supply closet until the smell fades. The supply closet was across the hallway, a tiny room filled with broken mops and rusted tools. The idea of running there exposed was unthinkable. The lights flickered. My heart stopped. I slammed my eyes shut, counting in my head each number a lifeline. 1, 2, 3. The flickering continued, a faint buzz in the air, like the bulb was struggling to stay alive. 4, 5. Something scraped against the booth's glass, slow and deliberate, like nails dragging across the surface. 6, 7. I wanted to scream, to open my eyes, to see what was out there, but the rule was clear. 8, 9. The scraping stopped, replaced by a low, wet gurgle, like something choking on its own blood. 10. I opened my eyes. The lights were steady, the booth empty, but the glass was smeared with something dark, streaking down in long, uneven trails. I didn't want to think about what it was. I checked the monitors again, my hands trembling. The warehouse feed showed the blood pool growing, seeping into the cracks in the concrete, forming shapes that looked almost like letters. I squinted, trying to make them out, but my brain refused to process it. Rule 8. Do not try to read anything written in blood. I tore my eyes away, my pulse roaring in my ears. The clock ticked to 6:30 a.m. Sunrise was close, but the factory didn't care. It felt alive, like it was feeding on my fear, tightening its grip with every second. Then I smelled it, burning, sharp and acrid like charred meat and melted plastic. Rule 7. My stomach twisted, but I had no choice. I grabbed my flashlight and bolted for the door, my boots slipping on the floor. The hallway was dark, the emergency lights dimmer than before, casting long, twisted shadows. The supply closet was only 20 feet away, but it felt like miles. I ran, the burning smell growing stronger, stinging my eyes. Something moved in the corner of my vision. A shape, tall and wrong, its limbs bending at angles that made my head hurt. I didn't look. I couldn't. I reached the closet, yanked the door open, and threw myself inside, slamming it shut behind me. The closet was cramped, the air thick with dust and the faint metallic tang of old tools. I crouched in the dark, my flashlight off, listening. The burning smell was fainter here, but it hadn't gone away. I could hear something outside, a faint shuffling like something dragging itself across the floor. My breath hitched, and I pressed my hand over my mouth, trying to stay silent. The shuffling stopped just outside the door, and then there was a sound. A low, wet chuckle like someone laughing through a mouthful of blood. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for sunrise, praying for the rules to save me. The smell faded after what felt like hours, though the clock in my head told me it was only minutes. I waited, counting my breaths, until I was sure it was gone. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty, but the air felt different, heavier, like the factory was watching me. I crept back to the booth, my flashlight beam shaking, and locked myself inside. The monitors were still on, but the warehouse feed was black, like someone had smeared paint over the camera. I didn't turn it off. I didn't want to know what would happen if I did. Sunrise was close, but the rules weren't done with me. Rule 9. If you hear your own voice calling your name, do not answer. Cover your mouth and wait until it stops. I sat there staring at the clock, waiting for the first light to break through the windows. And then, from the hallway, I heard it. My voice, clear as day, calling my name. It was soft, almost pleading, but there was something wrong with it, something hollow, like it was coming from a throat that wasn't mine. I clapped my hand over my mouth, my heart pounding, and waited for the night to end. The booth was no longer a sanctuary if it ever had been. My hand stayed clamped over my mouth, muffling my ragged breaths as my own voice called my name from the hallway, soft and wrong, like a recording played through a broken speaker. The rules, Rule 9, were clear. Don't answer, cover your mouth, wait. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst, each beat a hammer against my ribs. The voice called again, closer now, right outside the door, and it wasn't just my name anymore. It was pleading, whimpering, words I couldn't make out but felt in my bones, like a part of me was out there, trapped in whatever was mimicking me. I pressed harder against my mouth, my teeth digging into my palm, and squeezed my eyes shut, willing it to stop. The voice faded, but the silence that followed was worse, thick and alive, like the factory itself was breathing. I opened my eyes, glancing at the monitors. The warehouse feed was still black, a void that seemed to stare back. The hallway feed flickered, showing nothing but shadows, but I swore they moved, twisting in ways shadows shouldn't. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly, a reminder that sunrise was close, maybe minutes away. But the rules didn't promise safety, only survival if I followed them. I pulled the crumpled paper from my pocket, my hands trembling so badly I could barely read the final rule. Rule 10. When the first light hits the windows, leave the booth and walk to the gate. Do not look at the monitors. Do not look back. If you feel a hand on your shoulder, keep walking. I didn't want to move. The booth, smeared with that dark, streaking mess on the glass, felt like a trap. But the idea of stepping back into the factory, of walking through those hallways with whatever was out there, made my stomach churn. The burning smell from earlier lingered in my nose, mixed with that raw, meaty stench that clung to the air. I checked the windows, searching for any sign of dawn, but the sky was still a deep bruised purple, no hint of light. I had to wait, but waiting meant staying here with the monitors, the rules, and whatever was waiting for me to slip up. A low hum started, faint at first, creeping through the walls. Rule 3. Cover your ears, hum a different tune. My hands shot to my ears and I started humming, a shaky, off-key version of that same nursery rhyme, but it felt hollow, like the sound was being swallowed by the factory. The hum outside grew louder, jagged, like a chorus of voices trying to harmonize but failing, their tones clashing in a way that made my head throb. I hummed louder, my throat raw, until my voice cracked. The humming stopped, but something else took its place. A faint drip, drip, drip like water hitting the floor. I didn't want to look, but my eyes betrayed me, glancing at the booth's floor. A dark puddle was forming under the door, seeping in, thick and red. Not water at all. Rule 4. My heart lurched. Blood on the floor meant walk backward, lock the door, stay until sunrise. But the door was already locked, and the blood was inside, pooling around my boots, warm and sticky through the soles. I stumbled back, my chair tipping over with a clatter, and pressed myself against the far wall. The puddle spread, defying gravity, climbing the walls in thin, veiny trails, like the factory was bleeding from within. I fumbled for the rules, my hands slick with sweat, but they didn't say what to do if the blood was in the booth. The monitors flickered, and against every instinct I looked. The warehouse feed was back, but it wasn't the warehouse anymore. The screen showed the booth, my booth, from above, like a camera I hadn't noticed was watching me. I saw myself, hunched against the wall, eyes wide, blood pooling at my feet. But there was something else in the frame, just behind me. A shape too tall, too thin, its head tilted at that sickening angle from before. Its face was a blur, a smear of hollows and teeth, and it was reaching for me, its long, bony fingers inches from my shoulder. Rule 2. Don't acknowledge it. I slammed the monitor off, my breath hitching, and shut my eyes, counting to 5 minutes, each second an eternity. When I opened them, the monitor was still off, but the blood on the floor was moving, forming patterns. Letters I refused to read. Rule 8. The air grew colder, the booth's walls creaking like they were bending inward. I checked the windows again, still no light, but the purple sky was softening, a faint gray creeping in. Sunrise was close, but not close enough. The dripping had stopped, replaced by a new sound, scratching, slow and deliberate, coming from the ceiling. I didn't look up. I couldn't. The rules didn't mention the ceiling, but I wasn't about to break them now. My flashlight lay on the floor, its beam cutting a weak path through the dark, catching the edge of the blood pool. It wasn't just blood anymore. There were shapes in it. Fragments, like bits of bone or teeth, floating and sinking in the red. I heard my voice again, not calling my name this time, but whispering, a stream of words I couldn't understand, like a prayer in a language I didn't know. It was coming from inside the booth, from the walls, the floor, the air itself. Rule 9. Covered my mouth again, biting my lip until I tasted blood, forcing myself to stay silent. The whispering grew louder, angrier, and the blood on the floor bubbled like it was boiling. I pressed myself harder against the wall, my eyes darting to the windows. A faint orange glow was starting to break through, the first sign of dawn. Rule 10. I just had to make it to the light. The scratching on the ceiling intensified, faster now, like claws digging through metal. Something heavy shifted above me, and dust rained down, stinging my eyes. I didn't look up. I kept my eyes on the windows, on that growing sliver of light. The whispering stopped, and for a moment I thought it was over. Then I felt it, a hand on my shoulder, cold and wrong, its fingers digging into my flesh like they were made of bone and nothing else. Rule 10. Keep walking. But I wasn't walking. I was frozen, trapped in the booth with nowhere to go. The light grew brighter and I forced my legs to move, stumbling toward the door. The hand tightened, its grip burning cold, and I felt something wet trickle down my arm. Blood, mine or something else's, I didn't know. I unlocked the door, my hands shaking so badly I dropped the keys into the blood on the floor. I didn't stop to pick them up. I walked, eyes fixed on the faint glow at the end of the hallway, where the main entrance led to the gate. The factory was alive now, the walls groaning, the floor trembling under my feet. Shadows moved in my peripheral vision, tall and twisted, their limbs stretching too far, their faces hollow. I kept walking, the hand on my shoulder growing heavier, its fingers sinking deeper, until I felt bone against bone. The air was thick with that raw, meaty stench, mixed with the burning smell from before, and I gagged, my eyes watering. The gate was in sight, rusted and chained, but the first light of dawn was hitting it, painting the metal gold. I reached the gate, my hands fumbling with the chain, the hand on my shoulder now a claw, tearing at my skin. I didn't look back. I pushed the gate open, the metal screaming, and stumbled into the lot, the cool morning air hitting my face like a slap. The hand was gone. The factory was silent behind me, but I didn't turn around. I kept walking, my boots crunching on gravel until I reached the road. Only then did I stop, my chest heaving, my shoulder throbbing where the hand had been. I looked down expecting to see blood, torn skin, anything, but there was nothing, just my jacket untouched. I never went back. I didn't quit formally, I just never showed up again. The factory still stands, its broken windows glinting in the sun, but I drive a different route now, avoiding that road. Sometimes at night, I hear my voice calling my name, soft and wrong, and I cover my mouth, waiting for it to stop. The rules are still in my pocket, folded and worn, but I haven't looked at them since. I don't need to. They're burned into me like the factory itself, and I know I'll never be free of them.
Let me know which story is your favorite. Want a story on a specific topic? Let me know and I can write one.
It's my first week on the night shift, and the air feels heavier than it should, like the weight of silence pressing down on my chest. The store is a squat, glass-fronted box on the edge of town, surrounded by a parking lot that's more cracks than pavement, with a single flickering street lamp at the far end. I'm alone behind the counter, the register's faint beep my only company as I scan a pack of gum for the last customer of the evening, a guy in a stained hoodie who didn't look up once. He's gone now, and the door's chime is still fading into the quiet. The clock above the cigarette display says it's just past midnight. 7 hours to go. I lean against the counter, my sneakers squeaking on the floor, and try to shake the unease that's been crawling up my spine since I clocked in. The manager warned me about the night shift when I took the job. "Don't talk to anyone who comes in after midnight," he said, his eyes darting to the door like he expected someone to walk through it. "Just ring them up, take their money, and let them leave." When I asked why, he just shrugged and said, "Some folks around here, they're not right." I thought he was messing with me, some hazing ritual for the new guy. But now, with the store empty and the hum of the lights growing louder in my ears, his words feel like a weight in my gut. The first hour drags. I stock shelves, wipe down the counter, and try to ignore the way the shadows shift in the corners of the store. The security camera feed flickers on the small monitor behind the register, showing grainy black and white shots of the aisles, the parking lot, and the back storage room. I glance at it every few minutes, half expecting to see something move, but it's just static and shadows. Outside, the street lamp buzzes, its light stuttering like it's about to die. The darkness beyond the glass feels too close, like it's pressing against the windows, waiting for an invitation. I'm restocking the energy drinks when I hear the door chime. My heart lurches, and I nearly drop a can of Red Bull. I wasn't expecting anyone this soon. Most people don't come in until the bars close at 2. I straighten up, brushing my hands on my apron, and head back to the counter. A man stands just inside the door, his back to me, staring out at the parking lot. He's tall, lanky, wearing a long gray coat that looks too big for him, like it belongs to someone else. His hair is matted, dark, and hangs over his collar. He doesn't move, doesn't turn around, just stands there, his breath fogging the glass. "Hey," I say, my voice louder than I mean it to be. "Can I help you?" He doesn't respond. The manager's warning flashes in my mind, don't talk to anyone after midnight, but I push it down. He's probably just drunk, I tell myself, or high, or tired. I clear my throat and try again. "You need something, man?" Slowly, he turns. His face is wrong, not deformed, not monstrous, just wrong. His eyes are too far apart, like they're sliding off his skull, and his mouth is too wide, stretching almost to his ears. His skin is pale, almost gray, and it looks stretched tight over his bones, like there's not enough of it to cover him properly. He smiles, and I see his teeth. Small, sharp, and too many, crowded together like they're fighting for space. My stomach twists, and I grip the edge of the counter to steady myself. He doesn't speak, just shuffles toward the counter, his movements jerky, like a puppet with half its strings cut. His coat drags on the floor, leaving a faint smear of something dark and wet behind him. I want to look away, but I can't. His eyes lock onto mine, and they're not just empty. They're hungry. Not for food, not for anything I can name, but for something deeper, something I don't want to think about. He stops a few feet from the counter and points at the cigarette display behind me. His hand is wrong too. His fingers are too long, the knuckles swollen and knotted like they've been broken and reset wrong. I force myself to move, grabbing a pack of Marlboros without asking which kind. My hands shake as I scan the barcode, and the beep of the register sounds deafening in the silence. "That's, $7.50, I say, my mouth dry. He doesn't reach for his wallet. Instead, he leans forward, his head tilting at an angle that makes my skin crawl. His mouth opens wider, and I hear a sound, a low, wet gurgle, like something's caught in his throat. The smell hits me next, a mix of damp earth and something sour, like milk gone bad. I step back, my heel bumping the shelf behind me, and the pack of cigarettes slips from my hand onto the counter. "Don't," he says, his voice low and rasping, like he's dragging it up from somewhere deep inside. "Don't talk." I freeze. The manager's warning echoes in my head, and I nod, my heart hammering so hard I can feel it in my throat. He reaches into his coat pocket, and I brace myself, expecting a gun, a knife, something. But he pulls out a crumpled $10 bill, damp and stained with something brown. He slides it across the counter, his fingers brushing the surface, leaving faint streaks of that same dark, wet smear. I don't want to touch the money, but I force myself to pick it up, my fingers trembling as I open the register. The bill feels wrong, slick and cold, like it's been sitting in water. I shove it into the drawer and slide his change and the cigarettes toward him, careful not to let my hand get too close. He doesn't take them. He just stares, his eyes boring into me, and that gurgling sound comes again, louder this time, like he's choking on something alive. Then, without a word, he turns and shuffles back toward the door. The chime rings as he steps outside, and I watch him disappear into the dark, his coat trailing behind him like a shadow. The street lamp flickers, and for a moment I think I see him stop at the edge of the parking lot, his head turning back toward the store. But then the light steadies, and he's gone. I don't move for a long time. My hands are still shaking and my shirt is damp with sweat. I glance at the security monitor, but the feed is static, the screen flickering like it's struggling to hold an image. I spend the next hour trying to keep busy, restocking shelves, checking inventory, anything to keep my mind off what just happened. But every time I pass the counter, I see those streaks, and my skin crawls. I keep glancing at the door, expecting him to come back or someone else like him. The silence is worse now, thick and oppressive, like the air itself is watching me. Around 2, the door chimes again. I flinch, my heart lurching. But it's just a woman this time, middle-aged, with tired eyes and a nurse's scrubs. She grabs a coffee from the machine and a pack of gum, barely looking at me as she pays. I ring her up, my hand still unsteady, and she leaves without a word. The normalcy of it should be a relief, but it's not. The store feels different now, like something's settled into the cracks, something that wasn't here before. I'm mopping the floor near the back when I hear it. A faint scratching like nails on wood, coming from the storage room. I freeze, the mop handle slick in my hands. The sound stops, then starts again, slow and deliberate, like something's dragging itself along the wall. The storage room door is closed, and I know I locked it earlier. I always do because the manager said to keep it secure. But now I'm not so sure. I set the mop down and approach the door, my sneakers squeaking on the wet floor. The scratching gets louder as I get closer, and there's something else now, a low, rhythmic thumping like a heartbeat. My hand hovers over the doorknob, and I tell myself it's just a rat or a pipe or something normal. But my body doesn't believe it. My pulse is racing, and my mouth is so dry I can barely swallow. I turn the knob, and the door creaks open. The storage room is dark. The single bulb overhead burned out weeks ago, according to the manager. I fumble for my phone, turning on the flashlight, and the beam cuts through the shadows, illuminating shelves of canned goods and boxes of stock. The scratching stops, but the thumping doesn't. It's louder now, coming from the far corner, behind a stack of crates. I step inside, the air cold and damp like a basement after a flood. The smell is back, that same sour, earthy stench from earlier, but stronger, thicker, like it's coating the inside of my nose. I sweep the flashlight around and the beam catches something, pale, glistening, crouched low behind the crates. It's not a rat. It's not a person either. It's wrong, just like the man was. Its limbs are too long, bent at angles that shouldn't be possible. and its head is tilted back, its mouth open, showing rows of those same sharp, crowded teeth. It's not moving, not breathing, just sitting there, its eyes reflecting the light like a cat's, unblinking, fixed on me. I stumble back, my phone slipping from my hand, the flashlight beam spinning across the room before it hits the floor. The thumping stops, and the silence is worse, heavy and suffocating. I don't wait to see if it moves. I turn and run, slamming the storage room door behind me, my hands fumbling with the lock. It clicks into place and I back away, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The air in the convenience store feels thicker now, like it's clinging to my skin, heavy with that sour, earthy stench that won't leave my nose. I'm back behind the counter, my hands gripping the edge so hard my knuckles ache, trying to ground myself in the familiar. The hum of the cooler, the flicker of the fluorescent lights, the faint buzz of the street lamp outside. But nothing feels familiar anymore. The storage room door is locked and I've wedged a crate of soda cans against it for good measure. But my eyes keep darting to it, expecting the handle to rattle, expecting that thing to push through. The security monitor is still flickering, the screen a mess of static and shadows, but I don't look at it. I can't. Not after what I saw. My phone is still in the storage room, lying on the floor where I dropped it. The flashlight probably dead by now. I don't dare go back for it. Instead, I grab the store's landline from under the counter, my fingers fumbling over the buttons as I dial the manager's number. It rings and goes to voicemail. His voice, gruff and tired, tells me to leave a message. I hang up, my throat tight, and try again. Same thing. I slam the receiver down, the sound too loud in the quiet, and it makes me flinch. I'm alone here, and the realization sinks into my gut like a stone. The clock above the cigarette display reads 2:47. 4 hours left in my shift, but time feels meaningless, like it's stretching out to trap me here. I pace behind the counter, my sneakers squeaking on the linoleum, trying to shake the image of that thing in the storage room, its bent limbs, its glistening skin, its eyes reflecting my flashlight like they were drinking the light. I tell myself it was a trick of the shadows, a hallucination from exhaustion, but my body knows better. My heart hasn't stopped pounding, and my hands are clammy, leaving wet prints on the counter. The door chime rings and I nearly jump out of my skin. A man steps inside, short and stocky, wearing a trucker hat and a flannel shirt tucked into jeans. He looks normal, human, but after the last guy, I'm not taking chances. I force a smile, my voice shaky as I say, "Hey, welcome, can I help you?" He doesn't answer, just walks to the coffee machine and starts filling a cup. His movements are slow, deliberate, and he keeps his back to me, his head slightly tilted like he's listening to something I can't hear. I glance at the storage room door, then back at him, my pulse spiking again. The manager's warning, "Don't talk to anyone after midnight," loops in my head, but I already broke that rule once, and nothing happened. Not yet, anyway. The man turns, coffee in hand, and walks to the counter. His face is ordinary, ruddy cheeks, a scruffy beard, eyes that don't quite meet mine. He sets the coffee down, and I notice his hands, calloused, dirty, with nails that are cracked and yellowed, like they've been clawing at something for too long. I scan the coffee, my fingers trembling on the register keys. "That's $2, I say, keeping my voice low. He reaches into his pocket and my stomach lurches, expecting another damp-stained bill. But he pulls out a crumpled 5, dry and normal, and slides it across the counter. I hand him his change, careful not to touch his fingers, and he nods, muttering something I can't make out before heading for the door. The chime rings as he leaves, and I watch him cross the parking lot, his silhouette swallowed by the dark beyond the street lamp. I breathe out, my shoulders loosening a fraction, but the relief doesn't last. A faint scratching starts again, not from the storage room this time, but from somewhere above me. I freeze, my eyes darting to the ceiling. The fluorescent lights flicker, casting jagged shadows across the tiles, and the scratching grows louder, more insistent, like something's dragging itself across the roof. It's not a rat. Rats don't move like that, slow and heavy, with a rhythm that feels almost deliberate. I back away from the counter, my gaze fixed on the ceiling, and notice a stain I hadn't seen before. A dark, uneven patch spreading above the register, like a water leak, but thicker, almost oily. The scratching stops, and for a moment the store is silent again. Then I hear it. A low, wet gurgle, the same sound the first man made, but this time it's coming from the aisles. I grab the broom leaning against the counter, my hands slick with sweat, and step out from behind the register, my heart hammering so hard it hurts. The aisles are empty, the shelves lined with chips and candy bars, but the air feels wrong, like it's pressing down on me, heavy with that stench again, damp earth and sour rot. I move slowly, the broom raised like a weapon, though I know it's useless. The gurgling comes again, louder, from the back aisle near the coolers. I creep toward it, my sneakers silent now, my breath shallow. The fluorescent lights flicker again, and in the brief darkness I see something move. A flash of pale, glistening skin, too long and too thin, darting between the shelves. I stop, my blood running cold, and the gurgling turns into a low, rasping laugh, like air escaping a punctured lung. I back up, my heel catching on a loose tile, and stumble against the cooler door. The glass is cold against my back, and I can feel the vibration of the compressor, but it's drowned out by that laugh, echoing now, bouncing off the walls like it's coming from everywhere. I swing the broom, more out of panic than purpose, and it hits a shelf, knocking over a stack of canned soup. The cans clatter to the floor, the sound deafening, and the laughter stops. Don't move. Don't breathe, just stand there, clutching the broom, waiting for something to happen. The light's steady and the store is quiet again, but I know it's not over. I can feel it, like a pressure in my chest, like eyes on me from every corner. I edge back toward the counter, my gaze darting between the aisles, the ceiling, the storage room door. The stain above the register is bigger now, spreading like a bruise, and I swear I see it pulse, like something's breathing behind it. I'm almost to the counter when I hear a new sound. A soft, wet slap like bare feet on the floor, coming from the front of the store. I spin around, the broom raised, and see her. A woman, or something shaped like one, standing just inside the door. She's small, barely 5 feet, with long, stringy hair that hangs over her face. Her dress is soaked, clinging to her skin, and her arms hang limp at her sides, her fingers twitching like they're trying to grab something. She doesn't move, doesn't look up, just stands there. Water pooling beneath her feet, dark and viscous like the smears the first man left behind. I don't speak, I can't. My throat is locked tight and the broom feels like it weighs 100 pounds. She takes a step forward, her bare feet slapping the floor, and the sound makes my skin crawl. Her head tilts and I catch a glimpse of her face, gray, sunken with eyes that are too big, too black, like holes punched into her skull. She opens her mouth and that gurgling laugh comes again, wet and choking, like she's drowning from the inside. I stumble back, hitting the counter, and the broom falls from my hands, clattering to the floor. She doesn't stop, just keeps moving toward me, her steps slow and uneven, her head twitching like it's not fully attached. I glance at the storage room door, then the ceiling, then the security monitor, which is flickering again, showing her standing right where she is, but also showing something else, something behind me, something tall and bent, its limbs twisted, its mouth open wide. I don't look back. I can't. I grab the phone again, my fingers shaking so badly I can barely dial, but the line is dead now, just a faint hiss on the other end. The woman is closer, her smell hitting me like a wave, rotting leaves, stagnant water, and something sharper like blood. She's only a few feet away, her twitching fingers reaching out, and I realize I'm trapped. The counter behind me, the storage room to my left, the ceiling above me pulsing with that stain. The lights flicker again, and in the darkness I hear it. The scratching, the gurgling, the wet slap of feet all at once, closing in. The woman stops, her head snapping up and her eyes meet mine. They're not empty anymore. They're full of something I can't name, something that makes my legs weak and my vision blur. She smiles, her lips splitting too wide, and I see her teeth, sharp and crowded, just like the first man's. The lights come back on, and she's gone. The store is empty again, the air still, but the smell lingers, and the stain on the ceiling is dripping now, slow and thick, like blood mixed with oil. I don't move, don't breathe, just stand there, my hands gripping the counter, waiting for the next sound, the next shadow, the next thing that shouldn't be here. My shift isn't over, and I know deep in my bones that this night is far from done with me. The convenience store is a cage now, every corner a threat, every sound a warning. The air is so thick with that sour, rotting stench it feels like it's coating my lungs, making each breath a struggle. The stain on the ceiling is still dripping, slow and deliberate, each drop hitting the counter with a soft, wet plop that echoes in the silence. The liquid pools in the crevices of the linoleum, dark and viscous, streaking the surface like the smears left by the first man. I don't touch it. I don't even look at it for too long, afraid of what I might see in its reflection. The clock above the cigarette display reads 4:12. Less than 3 hours left in my shift, but time feels like a cruel joke, stretching out to keep me trapped here. I haven't moved from behind the counter since the woman, or whatever she was, disappeared. The broom lies where I dropped it, its handle angled across the floor like a broken promise. The storage room door is still barricaded with the crate of soda cans, but I don't trust it to hold. The scratching hasn't started again, but the silence is worse, heavy and expectant, like the store itself is holding its breath. The security monitor is useless, the screen flickering between static and glimpses of empty aisles, but I keep glancing at it, half expecting to see that thing from the storage room or the woman's black hole eyes staring back. I try the landline again, my hands shaking as I dial the manager's number for the 10th time. The hiss on the other end is louder now, almost a whisper, like someone's breathing just out of reach. I slam the receiver down, my chest tight, and scan the store for something, anything I can use to defend myself. There's a box cutter in the drawer under the register, its blade dull but better than nothing. I slip it into my pocket, the weight of it cold against my thigh, and try to focus on the hum of the coolers, the flicker of the lights, anything to drown out the panic clawing at my mind. The door chime rings and my heart stops. I grip the edge of the counter, the box cutter digging into my palm through my jeans. A boy steps inside, maybe 16, with a hoodie pulled low over his face and earbuds dangling from his neck. He looks normal, human, but so did the trucker at first. I don't say anything, just watch as he wanders to the chip aisle, his sneakers scuffing the floor. He grabs a bag of Doritos and a Mountain Dew, then shuffles to the counter, his eyes on his phone. I ring him up, my hands moving on autopilot, and he slides a crumpled 10 across the counter. It's dry, clean, nothing like the first man's bill, but I still flinch when my fingers brush it. He doesn't look up, just grabs his stuff and heads for the door. As the chime rings, I hear it. A faint, wet gurgle like the sound the woman made, coming from the direction he's walking. I lean over the counter, my pulse racing, and see him pause just outside the glass, his head tilting like he's heard something. The street lamp flickers, and for a split second I see a shadow behind him. Tall, bent, its limbs too long, its head twitching. The boy doesn't seem to notice. He pulls his hoodie tighter and disappears into the dark, but the shadow stays, lingering at the edge of the parking lot, its shape blurring into the night. I'm shaking now, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The store feels smaller, the walls closer, the ceiling lower, like it's shrinking around me. The dripping from the stain has stopped, but the pool on the counter is spreading, seeping into the cracks, and I swear I see it move, like something swimming just beneath the surface. I grab a rag and wipe at it, frantic, but the liquid clings to the cloth, thick and sticky, and when I pull it away, the rag is stained red, flecked with bits of something soft and fleshy. I drop the rag, my stomach churning, and back away until I hit the wall behind the register. The box cutter is in my hand now, though I don't remember pulling it out, the blade trembling as I hold it in front of me. The scratching starts again, not from the storage room or the ceiling, but from the walls themselves, a slow, deliberate scrape that moves in a circle around the store, like something's pacing just out of sight. The lights flicker, and the hum of the coolers grows louder, then cuts out entirely, plunging the store into a silence so deep it feels like drowning. Then I hear it. A voice low and rasping like the first man's, but closer, right behind the counter. "Don't talk," it says, the words wet and garbled. like they're being forced through a throat full of water. I spin around, the box cutter raised, but there's nothing there. Just the cigarette display and the flickering security monitor. The screen shows the counter, shows me standing there, but it also shows something else. Something crouched just behind me, its head tilted, its mouth open wide, rows of sharp teeth glinting in the grainy light. I don't look back. I can't. My legs are shaking so badly I can barely stand, but I force myself to move, stumbling toward the front door. I don't care about the shift, the job, the money. I just need to get out. But as I reach for the handle, the glass rattles, and I see it. The woman standing outside, her wet dress clinging to her gray skin, her black hole eyes fixed on me. She's not alone. The first man is there too, his too wide mouth smiling, his long fingers pressed against the glass, leaving smears of that dark, oily liquid. Behind them, the shadow from the parking lot looms, its twisted limbs stretching across the pavement, its head twitching like it's trying to see me through the dark. I back away, the box cutter slipping from my hand, clattering to the floor. The scratching in the walls is louder now, joined by that gurgling laugh, echoing from every corner, every aisle, every shadow. The lights flicker again, and in the brief darkness I feel something brush against my arm. Cold, slick, like a tongue made of ice. I scream, the sound tearing out of me, and the lights snap back on, revealing nothing but the empty store, the dripping stain, the barricaded storage room door. Trapped. The door is blocked, the phone is dead, and the store is alive with things that shouldn't be here. I crawl under the counter, curling into a ball, my hands over my ears to block out the scratching, the gurgling, the wet slap of feet circling closer. I don't know how long I stay there, my breath hitching, my heart pounding so hard it feels like it'll burst. The clock ticks on, but I don't look at it. I don't want to know how much time is left, how much longer I have to survive. The chime rings again, and I bite my lip to keep from screaming. Footsteps approach, slow and heavy, not the wet slap of the woman or the shuffle of the first man, but something else, something bigger. I peek out from under the counter, my vision blurred with tears, and see boots, black, scuffed, caked with mud that smells like the store's stench. The boots stop inches from my face, and I hear breathing, slow and ragged, like air being dragged through a clogged pipe. "Don't talk," the voice says, deep and guttural, and I feel something drip onto my hand, warm, thick, like the liquid from the ceiling. I don't look up. I don't move. I just press myself against the wall, praying for the clock to hit 7, for the sun to rise, for this night to end. But the footsteps don't move away. They stay, the breathing louder, the dripping faster, and I know deep in my gut that whatever's standing there is waiting for me to break, to speak, to look. The shift isn't over, the store isn't empty, and I'm not alone.
Thank you for listening. Hope I didn't scare you too much. If you like my stories, please consider giving me a like and subscribe. See you next time.